Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with another in the away end opposition preview. This time talking about Ipswich versus Aston Villa coming up on Sunday. Make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, help us on the road to 5k, and get your comments in, your thoughts on the upcoming game, predictions, all that jazz. And to join me in the away end today is Mark from Talking Town podcast. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Good, good, good. So we're going to get into the game, get your predictions, get your thoughts on Ipswich and Aston Villa, and what your thoughts are on what threats might be to come. But first of all, back in the Premier League, Ipswich Town, an absolute meteoric rise from League One straight through the Championship. What have you made of kind of Ipswich over the last couple of years, really?
Yeah, well, it's been a quite a magical sort of ride for Ipswich fans. Obviously, being in League One, it kind of looks like that we weren't really going to do a great deal with the previous ownership. Um, it became more of a chore supporting Ipswich, going to games, not really winning a great deal. Going to quite disastrous places and not picking up results. So it was, yeah, it's obviously a stark contrast to what we are now, and obviously a lot of that is down to the new ownership, having a very good manager, a young manager
Mm.
coming through, and obviously just building a team because at the end of the day we look at this Premier League side at the moment. Probably half of that is what we came up with through League One,
Yeah.
let alone the Championship. So it's a massive step up. It was a step up in the Championship, let alone to be in the Premier League and do it back to back. So yeah, it's a great time, and obviously for us as Ipswich fans, I think we see this as a kind of a time where it doesn't kind of matter in a sense, if that makes sense, because
Yeah.
it's it's one of those where we could do really badly this year, but we could do reasonably well and stay up. So there isn't too much pressure on it. I think that's the main thing. But yeah, as any Ipswich fan will tell you, it's been a long time since we was in the Premier League. I think it's 22 years, and now we're back. It's one of them where we want to do well, obviously, but I'd take 17th all day long in a sense. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I was obviously talking to Martin on the his opposition preview about kind of how Aston Villa went up from the Championship in the kind of circumstances that they did manage to stay up by the skin of their teeth
Yeah.
in that first season of the Premier League, and then have gone on to, with a couple of bumps in the road, have gone on to what they've done now. So just staying in the Premier League, it is absolutely huge for any club by hook or by crook. But what have you made to Ipswich's start so far in the Premier League, and what has kind of surprised you, or what have you found in terms of the standard of the Premier League so far?
Yeah, it's been a tricky start. I mean, having Liverpool and then City is the two opening games. You can't
Yeah.
really get too much harder than that. But I didn't think we were too bad. I mean, obviously we kept Liverpool out for at least 45 minutes.
Hmm.
Obviously the quality showed through, throughout the game. And obviously we ended up losing the game. And then moving on to City, got the early goal. And obviously again the quality does show with players like Haaland on show and stuff like that. So it was always going to be a case that we probably wouldn't pick anything up in those first two games. But then we moved on to Fulham and Brighton, and picked up some good points there. Certainly the Fulham game at home, we probably should have won that game, to be honest. So it was sort of a bit disappointing. But again, you kind of take what you can get
Mm.
from the season. Brighton, kind of a backs to the walls job sort of thing, really. A very good side, and ultimately we're a club that aspires to be somebody like yourselves, but also Brighton. Where we become an established Premier League club. And then there was a bit of disappointment, I suppose, away at Southampton last weekend. I think going into that game, you'd think that there's a 6-pointer there, um, but yeah, managed to get a last minute point. And obviously, when you get a last minute equaliser, then obviously that's a great point on the road. Then, so if we can pick up points on the road, but try and make Portman Road a bit more of a fortress, and try and get the odd win here and there, then yeah, we should be all right. But I think generally the standard of the Premier League since we were in it has obviously been a massive step up.
Mm.
and the way that teams play football, it's a lot different to when it was 22 years ago. And even Aston Villa obviously doing very well at the moment as well. So it's I suppose it's difficult to kind of say at the moment because it's still early days.
Yeah.
But I think there's enough there for us to, at the end of the day, I keep saying to a lot of people, you've only got to have 3 teams worse than you in
Yes.
this league. So,
Yes.
and I can sort of see that at the moment, but it's obviously we need to pick up those wins, especially against teams like Southampton, who are going to be fighting against it with us. But unfortunately, we got a point last weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your fixtures, I mean, I've seen a couple of, I haven't watched too much of Ipswich in the Premier League. I watched quite a bit of them in the Championship, and they
Yeah.
played some great football. But looking at that, the last 3 results, 3 steady draws after a difficult start
Yeah.
with Liverpool and Manchester City. You've got to be reasonably pleased with that because ultimately you haven't lost for 3 games, and making yourself hard to beat is something that you can really you know take on into the next few games.
Yeah, I think I heard something on Talksport the other day, and it was just as well. I was going up to the Brighton game a couple of weeks ago, and the Talksport analyst said that we've had a nightmare start to the season, and I couldn't disagree with that anymore because, as I say, the Liverpool and the City game, we weren't expecting anything from that.
Mm,
I thought we did okay. We played some good stuff, and obviously got a goal against City, so that was nice. But then, at home to Brighton again, we should have won that game. Sorry, at home to Fulham, we should have won that game, and then back to the Wolves job against Brighton. That's good. 2 good points that we picked up there. So I can't see why that's a nightmare start to the season. And then you sort of see stuff on Match of the Day where there's 5 or 6 teams that haven't won this year, and we're
mm,
one of them.
mm.
And it's going to be difficult, And like you say, last season we was in the Championship playing really free flowing football. We're not going to be able to do that this year. There'll be patterns of play we can do that in, and certain games we can do that in, but it's not going to be like that for the rest of the season. So we are going to have to be switched on and defend where we can. But going back to your point, yeah, I'm happy with this with the start of the season. It could be a lot worse. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Aston Villa to come on Sunday. What have you seen of Aston Villa so far this season, and yeah, what have you made to kind of Aston Villa and the challenge that they will
Mm.
face, the Ipswich players will face this weekend?
Yeah, I've always liked Aston Villa, really historic sort of club. I remember you guys coming to us in the Championship, always good set of fans and stuff like that. And yeah, for me, again, we we want to be you guys in a few years. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But there's the foundations there from our point of view that could be like an Aston Villa, hopefully in the future. But certainly looking at it at the moment, there's lots of talk about Ollie Watkins not scoring goals. Obviously, he gets a few the other day, so his confidence is up, hopefully. But it's I thought you did really well to keep someone like Emery, who's a really top class manager,
Mm.
and obviously there's lots of clubs looking at Emery as well as McKenna start of the season. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Really
very
could have
very
gone to
good
Man
manager.
United, couldn't he, McKenna?
Yeah, he could have. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like Chelsea.
yeah,
Other teams were interested. I think West Ham were on stage as well. So he's a really good manager. But the thing with Emery is he's experienced. He's been around a lot. Probably unfairly treated at Arsenal somewhat. Had a really big task on his hands when he took over from Arsene Wenger. But he's just the right manager for you guys, I think. And
yeah.
Aston Villa, I think, are back where they should be as a big club. And yeah, I think you guys are going to do quite well this year.
Mm,
I think you've made some
mm.
good signings. I like Tielemans. I think he's a very good player. I know he's been with you a couple of years now, but he's a very good player in the middle. He looked fairly solid at the back. So yeah, I think all in all, I think you're a very good side at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in dreamland at the moment as Aston Villa supporters with the kind of manager that we have. He just recently got 50 wins
Yeah,
in the shortest amount of time for any Aston Villa manager. We're in the Champions League and obviously got our first win in that. And we're third in the table at the moment, and we haven't had on paper the toughest of starts, and the game against Arsenal was the one where you're probably thinking, right, you beat a team that's potentially going to be
yeah,
around you in the league, and we pushed them all the way, but ultimately came up short. But you've got to every game in the Premier League is tough, and no, this one coming up on Sunday will bring about a different challenge, because as you've said, Ipswich will want to make Portman Road a bit of a fortress, or want to make it difficult for any team that comes to them. And an early goal or a frustrating Aston Villa, and then getting something late on is something that might be in on the agenda for Ipswich and Kieran McKenna. So, how do you think he will approach the game on Sunday?
Yeah, well, just going back to your point about, from a Villa perspective, I think a lot of your fans would think that Ipswich might be a potential banana skin, because
Mm,
you should really be beating us, really,
mhm.
whether it's at home or away. So you would go into that game thinking, well, we should be beating this lot because they're going to be towards the bottom of the at the tables at the end of the season. So if we're looking to really take points off sides like that, it should be beating Ipswich. But the difference is with that, then we are a team that I think is getting into a bit of a groove now, despite what happened last weekend. I think we are sort of, I suppose, slowly managing expectations in the Premier League. So I think how we'll set up this weekend, certainly on Sunday, will be that I don't think it'll be too different from what we've had or what we've seen from the few opening games, purely because McKenna is the type of player where he won't shut up shop. He will want to, keep going. And obviously at home, then he should be like that anyway. But he will play on the front foot. I suppose being in the Premier League, he's probably got that eye in the back of his mind, thinking, well, we do need to sort of consolidate a little bit and defend, and obviously, nullify any threats that you've got there. And there's quite a few from what I can see. So it's a difficult one for how we will actually set up, but I think it won't be too dissimilar from what we've done in the first few games. And I don't think the team will change all that much as well. I think you'll probably see most of the team that played last week start, maybe
Right.
for a couple of changes here and there. But yeah, I think it will be very much the same sort of side.
And who are the players that the Aston Villa fans, Aston Villa, the team would need to watch out for in terms of the Ipswich lineup? Amari Hutchinson, is he the kind of main danger man?
Well, he was last year. Um, I'll sort of speak on my own behalf here, but I've watched, I think, all of the games live this year, and it's been one of those where Hutchinson has probably struggled a little bit in terms of keeping up with the pace of the Premier League. So he hasn't really got going yet.
Hmm.
He could be at the weekend, but the point being is that he hasn't at the moment. So I think in terms of players to watch for me, is Delap, the striker. He'll run all day. He'll cause problems. He's a big threat. He's a tall bloke. So it wouldn't be surprised if we get a goal and it came from him. So he's probably one to sort of watch out for. Unlucky to not score against Brighton, hit the post with a really good sort of mazy run from halfway line. So
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
he was unfortunate with that one. But yeah, I think Delap's probably a very key man. I think probably our biggest asset and biggest key man, if you like, is probably Leif Davis, the
Right.
fullback at left back. Obviously broke the assist record in the Championship last year. So very good going forward. The only thing I would say is that he is quite suspect sometimes with his defending. Gave a few penalties away last year. Scored a couple of own goals as well. But what he does give you is a massive threat going forward. So he'll probably come in from the left back into the pitch a bit and sort of be as that kind of midfield, but also bomb forward down the wing as well. So he's a massive threat. And then I think really it's, looking at players like whether he'll start or not, but Jack Clark's looks a good player. We just signed him from Sunderland. So he looks a good player. Sammy Samodic's obviously got his goal against City,
Yeah.
but hasn't really done an awful lot since. So we've got a few players that have got, a turn of pace, a bit of skill, but it's kind of bringing it all together because at the end of the day, we've made 11 signings. So it's kind of trying to make them sort of gel together, really. But I think in terms of key men, it's certainly Davis and probably Delap.
Yeah. I mean, you remind it very much like the Aston Villa team that went up from the Championship into the Premier League and making those number of signings that are good, promising players
Yeah,
that if they can buy into the culture and can pick up the game quickly, the way that McKenna wants to play, you will get results.
Yep.
You'll be in a lot of games. It's just whether you can convert those into enough wins or into enough draws to keep that momentum going and to keep you pushing on. And goals are extremely important as well. So quicker you can get Smodics or Delap or Hutchinson scoring, that's what's gonna keep you up
Yep.
into the division. One other player who springs to mind and very familiar with Aston Villa fans is Axel Twanzebe, and good
Yep.
to see him getting minutes and getting game time and keeping fit, because he was brilliant in that season that we went up on loan. And I think we did try and sign him actually for the first season in the Premier League, but because he did so well, Manchester United wanted him still at the club, but then ended up not really playing him as much. But yeah, he's great to see him kind of really pushing on with his career again.
Yeah, I think by trade he's a centre half, but I
Hmm.
think his best position, in my opinion, is right back, and I think there's a lot of Ipswich fans will agree with me with that. Mainly because he's not the type of player that will bomb forward like a Leif Davis on the opposite side. If anything, he gets a nosebleed if he crosses halfway line. But he's one of those sort of players where he will defend. He's a very good defender, and he has really grown into Premier League. But he's also played in this league before, so he probably knows what's coming with it. But I must admit, when we first signed him in League One, and albeit he didn't have a great deal of fitness, I think we signed him midway through the season, and he didn't have a
Right.
club at the time. So, but he was dreadful, absolutely dreadful, and he was playing right back as well. So he's really grown into, I suppose with the club, but also moving forward with it. And I wouldn't say that he was a starter last year in the Championship. So it's funny how some players really sort of know their league and will play well in certain leagues. But yeah, very good defender on his day. I think he's probably been one of our probably top performers, if I'm honest, in the opening games. So yeah, really good signing for us, and obviously adds a bit of Premier League experience where we haven't really had that across the squad without
Yeah.
the new signings we've made, because a lot of them have obviously come from the Championship. So yeah, good Premier League sort of experience with him as well.
Excellent. And a lot of the way that you're talking sort of tactically is quite similar to how Unai Emery operates with Aston Villa. He likes his left-sided defender to bomb on, Luca Digne most of the time, and it has been Ian Matson who generally comes on with 20 minutes to go, who can go that extra little bit, and he's got a little bit more pace than, well, quite a bit more pace than Luca Digne. And then the right back, the right-sided defender, is tends to be a little bit more reserved, because especially if he's playing Leon Bailey, because Leon Bailey is the right winger, and he, will try and push Leif Davis if he does
Yeah,
play right into defending it into the defensive areas. So it does seem quite similar. The fullback attacks on the left, and the right back doesn't necessarily. It kind of becomes a bit of an auxiliary centre back if Pau Torres pushes forward as well into midfield. So it'll be an interesting sort of clash of similar styles, I would say, and then just to see whether I guess your team can nullify the threats that Villa will possess.
yeah,
The likes of Leon Bailey, as I've mentioned, Morgan Rogers, Jacob Ramsey, Yuri Tielemans, Ollie Watkins, John Duran. There's quite a few names there,
yeah,
Mark.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think in terms of how we set, we always play two in front of the back four. So it'll be Sam Morsey and probably either Calvin Phillips or Kajusti. So either one of those two would be certainly looking to go forward, but will also defend as well and try and nullify that threat from a Tielemans or someone else. So it's it'll be an interesting matchup. But I think it will come down really to, and this is cliche, but it will come down to clinical finishing at the end of the day, because I think there is good quality on show from both sides. Obviously, you guys with the with the kind of better quality, if you like, but generally it'll make for a good game, I think. But
Mhm.
I think we need to really start off well if we're going to get anything from the game. And what I mean by that is actually kind of taking some of the possession. I do find that if we score early on, then it becomes a bit of a defensive display. And I don't think we really handle that too well, to be honest. So, if anything, I don't really want to get the first goal too early on. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but yeah, it will certainly be a good matchup.
Awesome. So before I trouble you for a score prediction, just talking about the Premier League season, you mentioned kind of just enjoying it and almost the pressure being off Ipswich. But what are your expectations, for the season moving forward?
Ultimately, it's just staying up. As I said to you earlier, I think if you could take 17th now, I'll take it, bite your hand off. So that's what it's always been about for us this year, is staying up and sort of building from there, if you like. If we can do that, that'd be great. And we've had back-to-back promotions the last 2 seasons, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. And it would just be nice to have a bit of sort of just been a bit stable, I suppose. Especially growing into the Premier League, because I think the worst thing could be is that we get relegated this year, we lose a lot of good players, we have to rebuild again. Well, I think either way we could probably lose McKenna at the end of the season, whether we stay up or go down, because he is a manager that will be touted for good jobs. He's already been touted for good jobs. I think he made a really sensible decision staying with us this year, because it was his first Premier League campaign as a manager.
Yeah.
I think if he went to a bigger club, he probably would have been sort of swallowed up into it, I think. But I can sort of see him doing what Vincent Kompany's doing, where, I know Burnley got relegated last year, but, obviously a fairly good manager in there somewhere. So obviously he's at Bayern Munich now. So I imagine he'll get a type of job still in the Premier League, but to bigger and better things, if that makes sense, whether we go down or stay up. So, but yeah, I think from our collective aspirations, it's very much staying up, seeing what we can do, see where we can get points off. I'd do back us to go somewhere and cause an upset somewhere this season. You kind of see it each season, don't you, with a lower league Premier League side, and they go to Liverpool or Man City. I think Nottingham Forest have already done it against Liverpool, haven't they? So it's one of them where I'd back us to do that.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not Sunday for my sake. But
Yeah,
yeah, I do absolutely wish you all the best for the season, and it is great having Ipswich back in the
yeah,
Premier League and playing the type of football that got them up, and it's really good. And as I said on the Talking Town podcast the other day, some tweaks to that kind of system, and little bit kind of, I guess, ruthless finishing if you can, and just solid defending where you can, to kind of get that nous to get results, and you should be fine. And
yeah,
it's the teams that kind of get that early enough in the season. I mean, Villa were almost too late in that lockdown season, but we managed to kind of just figure it out in time. But if you figure it out in terms of, yeah, let's go for results, sacrifice some of that free flowing football a little bit to get results in certain games, then you'll
yeah.
be fine.
Yeah, well, as I said to you earlier, it only takes 3 sides to be worse than you. And,
Yeah.
I can probably name you 3 now in terms of Everton, Southampton, and, maybe a Leicester or someone like that, where I don't think that we're any worse than them.
Mm.
But over the course of the season, obviously managers get sacked. You get January transfer window come in. You get all those kind of momentum points in the season, which could sort of turn your season, I suppose. But yeah, we'll have to see. But I think obviously we'll stick with McKenna until the end of the season, very much so. But it's what we can do with the players we've got, certainly until January, and see what happens. But yeah, I'm quietly confident that I think we can stay up. It's just where we're going to get the points from, I don't know.
Well, let's finish up with our score prediction. So, what are you saying for Sunday's big game?
Um, I've been toying with either a draw or potentially an Ipswich win, and I say that with my Ipswich hat on, I suppose. But yeah, I might just go 2-1 Ipswich, but I think it might be a draw.
Well, I went 2-1 Villa, because we don't keep clean sheets,
Yeah,
and I do think it will be a real spirited display from Ipswich. And as with any team, they in the Premier League causes any team problems. You guys got a goal against Man City,
yeah,
so it's one of those where teams can cause problems. I just feel that Aston Villa now are in a situation where if we do go behind or if we do get pegged back, we've got players who can come off the bench
Yeah.
and change games for us. And that's the difference between some of the teams in the Premier League and those kind of, I'm now saying it as an Aston Villa supporter, the ones, the top 6 clubs, we've the last 5 games, we've been able to utilize our substitutes and they've changed the game for us.
Mm.
We were 1-0
Yeah,
down
I'd
against
say
Wolves.
arguably that you've
Yeah.
got probably a stronger bench than some of the actual traditional top 6
Yeah,
sides.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, we brought on in the first game of the season, we brought Ian Matson, Jacob Ramsey, and John Duran onto the pitch at 1-1. They all combined to score to get the winning goal. We're 2-0 down against Everton. He brings Ross Barkley on at half time. Ross Barkley kind of changes the game and gets us possession. And then John Duran comes on and scores an absolute worldie. And then against Wolves, Barkley and Duran come on again. Bailey and Matson come on at half time. And you're changing a good proportion of your team there with almost not necessarily better players than have been on the pitch earlier, but just players who can change it and
Yeah.
a different quality, a different type of player. So yeah, I do think that will come through. So I think 2-1 Villa, but I think it'll be a close game, as I said, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a good game. I think it's a Sunday at 2 o'clock. So we've not really ever done those sort of games because in the championships it's either if it's not a Saturday, it's probably a Friday night kickoff or something like that. Obviously a Tuesday as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like on a Sunday. Because the only time we ever play on a Sunday is Derby Day against Norwich, and that's always a 12 o'clock one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be good to see what happens.
Nice one. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. Just shout out the podcast, shout out your socials as well, where people can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me, Mark Tuxford _. That's my personal Twitter profile. You can also find us the Talking Town podcast, which is run by Martin Lambert, Matt Phillips, and the rest of them. So you can find them on all sorts of platforms, YouTube. So yeah, do go and listen to us if you were interested in a little bit more about Ipswich. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I was on the podcast the other day, and that I think it's got some great numbers in terms of views and some really nice comments. So yeah, really good channel. And Ipswich fans, jump across to ours, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. We will be doing our full match preview with the lads live on Friday night. So you're more than welcome to join there, and we'll obviously have match reaction, win, lose or draw across the weekend as well. So make sure you tune into that. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Mark, once again. And as always, remember, we'll follow the Villa.